My daughter-in-law didn't show up at my son's funeral. Hours later, she posted a picture of herself drinking in Cancun with the gardener, the caption reading, "Enjoy life while you can." It was right then that I received a message from my son and froze. "Mom, come to my house. Now." I never thought I would bury my son alone. Standing in that funeral home on a gray Tuesday morning, I watched the handful of people who came to pay their respects to Richard. I kept glancing toward the entrance, waiting and hoping. Maybe the traffic was bad, maybe her flight was delayed, maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why Olivia, my daughter-in-law of 8 years, wasn't there to mourn her own husband. The funeral director approached me with the practiced sympathy they all seemed to master. "Mrs. Morrison, should we wait a few more minutes?" I cleared my throat, trying to maintain whatever dignity I had left. "No, let's begin." 37 people came to say goodbye to my son. I counted them. 37 people who cared enough to take time from their Wednesday to honor Richard's memory. His wife was not one of them. I delivered the eulogy myself. What else could I do? I talked about Richard's childhood, his love for baseball, and how he'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. I spoke of how proud I was when he started his own consulting firm. I didn't mention how he'd struggled with anxiety in recent years, or how distant he'd become from everyone, including me. I certainly didn't mention how his marriage seemed to be falling apart, though I'd pretended not to notice. As people filed past the casket, offering their condolences, I heard the whispers. "Where's Olivia? Isn't that his wife? How awful for her to miss this." The sympathy in their voices made my chest tighten. If only they knew. After the service, I drove to the cemetery alone, the hearse following behind me with my son's body. I should have been focusing on Richard, on saying goodbye, on grieving properly. Instead, my mind kept circling back to one question: where the hell was she? Back at home that evening, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. I had called Olivia 6 times, and each call went straight to voicemail. I'd sent text messages, but there was no response. Richard's death had been sudden, a heart attack at 34. Stress-related, they said. I had called Olivia immediately after the hospital pronounced him dead, and she'd seemed appropriately shocked, appropriately devastated. She had cried on the phone, asked about arrangements, and promised to fly back from her sister's house in Phoenix, where she'd been visiting. That was 4 days ago. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I checked social media. Richard had always been private about his personal life, and I'd never been one for Facebook or Instagram, but grief makes you do strange things. I found Olivia's Instagram account easily enough. Her profile picture was still of her and Richard from their anniversary dinner last year, both smiling, his arm around her shoulders. She looked radiant in that photo, with her blonde hair perfectly styled and her green eyes bright with what I had thought was happiness. I scrolled down through her recent posts, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't yet name. There were photos from Phoenix, dinners with her sister, shopping trips, all posted after Richard's death, all showing a woman who looked anything but grief-stricken. Then I found it. Posted 3 hours ago, while I was delivering my son's eulogy, was a photo that made my blood turn to ice. Olivia, in a bright red bikini with a cocktail in hand, stood on a beach with crystal blue water behind her. She was laughing, her head thrown back, completely carefree. Next to her stood a man I recognized, Miguel, the gardener who'd been working on their landscaping for months. His arm was around her waist, and they were both grinning at the camera. The location tag read, Cancun, Mexico. The caption made my hands shake. "Life's too short not to live it. Cheers to new beginnings." I stared at that photo for 20 minutes, reading and rereading those words. While I stood over my son's grave, throwing dirt on his coffin, his wife was toasting new beginnings in Mexico with another man. The comments were even worse. Friends were congratulating her on the trip, asking if she was finally happy, and telling her she deserved this. One comment from her sister made my stomach turn. "So glad you're done with all that drama. Miguel is perfect for you." Done with all that drama? My son's death was just drama to be done with? I closed the laptop and walked to the liquor cabinet, something I rarely did. I poured 3 fingers of whiskey and sat back down, trying to process what I'd seen. 8 years of marriage, of family dinners, holidays, and birthdays. I'd watched Olivia become part of our family and had grown to care for her like a daughter. I'd even defended her to Richard when their fights got bad, telling him that marriage required patience and understanding. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number, but somehow, I knew exactly who it was before I even looked. Mom, come to my house. Now. We need to talk. Don't tell anyone. Richard. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the kitchen floor, the screen cracking, but I barely noticed. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick it up again. I read the message 3, 4, 5 times. It had to be some kind of mistake, a cruel joke. Someone had gotten hold of Richard's phone. But the number was different, and who would do something so sick? With trembling fingers, I grabbed my car keys. I had to see for myself. I had to know what kind of nightmare I'd stumbled into. Because one thing was certain, I just buried my son this morning, and dead men don't send text messages. I drove to Richard's house in a daze, my mind refusing to accept what seemed impossible. The familiar, tree-lined street looked the same as always, but everything felt different now, wrong somehow. I'd been here just 2 days ago, helping Olivia pack some of Richard's things before her supposed trip to Phoenix. She'd been crying then, or at least I thought she had been. Richard's house sat dark against the October sky, with only a single light glowing from the kitchen window in the back. My hand shook as I used my spare key to open the front door. Richard? I called out, my voice cracking. Silence answered me. I walked through the living room, past the couch where I'd comforted Olivia 4 days ago when the hospital called. I passed the family photos on the mantel, Richard's college graduation, their wedding day, Christmas mornings. Everything looked exactly the same, yet nothing made sense anymore. The kitchen light drew me forward. As I rounded the corner, I froze. My son sat at his own kitchen table, very much alive, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. He looked up when I entered, his face pale and drawn, with dark circles under his eyes that I'd never noticed before. He'd lost weight, a lot of it. His clothes hung loose on his frame. Mom, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My brain struggled to process what my eyes were seeing. This was my son, alive and breathing, sitting in his kitchen 3 hours after I'd watched his coffin lowered into the ground. You're supposed to be dead, the words came out strangled, barely human. Richard's face crumpled. I know. I know how this looks, how insane this must be for you. Please, sit down. Let me explain. I remained standing, my legs locked in place. I buried you today, Richard. I threw dirt on your coffin. I gave your eulogy. What kind of sick game is this? It's not a game, he said, standing up slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. Mom, I'm in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that could destroy not just me, but you too. Everything we've worked for, everything our family has built. What are you talking about? Richard ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make thousands of times since childhood when he was nervous or scared. 6 months ago, I made a mistake at work. A huge mistake. I was handling the Meridian Industries account. You remember, the pharmaceutical company? They were our biggest client, worth $2.5 million annually. I nodded numbly. He'd talked about that account constantly, about how it was going to set his firm up for years. I discovered they were falsifying their clinical trial data, he continued, his voice breaking. Hiding serious side effects from a new arthritis medication. People were getting sick, Mom. Really sick. Some were dying. I should have reported it immediately, but Meridian's CEO, James Crawford, he offered me $500,000 to keep quiet. Just look the other way, he said. Let the FDA approval process continue. My stomach dropped. Please tell me you didn't take it. Richard's silence was answer enough. Oh, Richard, what were you thinking? I was thinking about Olivia's spending, about the mortgage on this house, about the debt we'd racked up trying to keep up appearances. She wanted the renovations, the new car, the vacation to Europe. $500,000 would have solved everything. He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. But I couldn't do it, Mom. I couldn't let people die for money. So what happened? I went to the FBI. I turned over all the evidence and became a whistleblower. Crawford was arrested last month, and the medication was pulled from the market. But before they got him, he made sure I'd pay for betraying him. Richard walked to the kitchen window, staring out into the darkness. Crawford has connections, Mom. Bad connections. The kind of people who don't forgive and don't forget. 3 weeks ago, I started getting threats. Phone calls telling me that I destroyed too many careers, cost too many people too much money. They wanted me to disappear. Permanently. I sank into a chair, my legs finally giving out. So you faked your death? Dr. Peterson helped me. He's an old friend from college who works at the hospital now. We staged the heart attack, falsified the death certificate. Peterson said I had maybe hours before Crawford's people found me. This was the only way. The pieces were starting to come together, but one huge question remained. What about Olivia? She was devastated when I called her. She cried on the phone. Richard's expression hardened. Olivia knew everything, Mom. About the Meridian account, about the money I turned down, about the threats. She knew I was planning to fake my death. He paused, his voice dropping to barely audible. She was supposed to play the grieving widow for 6 months, then quietly move away and meet me in Canada. We'd start over, together. But she's in Cancun with Miguel, I said flatly. Richard's laugh was bitter and broken. Yeah, I saw the Instagram post too. She was supposed to wait, Mom. We had a plan. But apparently, she had a better one. I thought about the photo, about Olivia's radiant smile, about the comments from her friends. She was never planning to meet you in Canada, was she? No. I figured that out when I saw my life insurance policy had been cashed in. $750,000, paid out to my loving widow just yesterday. Richard turned back to face me. She played her part perfectly, didn't she? The shocked wife, the grieving widow too distraught to even attend the funeral. She probably figured being mysteriously absent would make her seem even more tragic. The full scope of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. She let me bury an empty coffin. She let me grieve for you while she was planning her vacation with her lover. I'm sorry, Mom. I never meant for you to get hurt like this. I thought if I could just disappear, start over somewhere else, maybe everyone would be safer. But I couldn't let her get away with this. She not only betrayed me, she betrayed you, too. She made you suffer while she counted her money. I looked at my son, thinner, haunted, but alive, and felt something shift inside me. The grief I'd carried for 4 days began transforming into something else entirely, something harder and colder. What do we do now? I asked. Richard met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd walked into his kitchen, I saw a spark of the determination that had made him successful in business. Now, we make sure she doesn't get to enjoy that money. And we make sure she pays for what she put you through. How? A slow smile spread across Richard's face, and I realized my son had inherited more of my calculating nature than I'd ever known. Well, Mom, legally speaking, I'm still dead. Which means Olivia is about to discover that being married to a dead man has some very serious complications. Richard moved to the kitchen counter and pulled out a laptop I'd never seen before. His movements were careful, methodical, like a man who'd been planning something for a long time. There's more you need to know, Mom. Things I discovered after I was supposed to be dead. He opened the laptop and turned the screen toward me. Olivia wasn't just planning to abandon me in Canada. She was planning to destroy me long before that. The screen showed email exchanges, bank records, and text message screenshots. My eyes struggled to focus on the details, but Richard walked me through each piece of evidence with the precision of the business consultant he'd trained to be. 3 months ago, I started noticing money missing from our joint accounts, he began. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $300 there. When I confronted Olivia about it, she said she was buying surprise gifts for our anniversary. He clicked to another screen. She was buying gifts, all right. Just not for me. Photos of expensive jewelry, designer handbags, and luxury hotel receipts filled the screen, all purchased during times when Olivia claimed to be visiting her sister in Phoenix or shopping with friends in Chicago. Miguel wasn't just our gardener, Mom. They'd been having an affair for 8 months. These hotel receipts show they were meeting twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Always on my credit card. My hands clenched into fists. She was spending your money to cheat on you. It gets worse, Richard's voice was steady, but I could see the pain behind his eyes. When the FBI investigation started and I told Olivia I might have to enter witness protection, she didn't just agree to come with me, she encouraged it. Said it would be an adventure, a chance to start fresh. But look at this. He opened a new folder filled with more screenshots, text messages between Olivia and someone named Marcus Financial Services. She was already talking to a private investigator, Mom. Not to help protect me from Crawford's people, but to gather evidence that I was mentally unstable. Look at these messages. I leaned closer to read. The messages were cold and calculating. Olivia was describing Richard's anxiety, his drinking, his erratic behavior since becoming a whistleblower. She was building a case that he was having a mental breakdown, that he might hurt himself or others. She was going to have me committed. Worse than that, Richard corrected. She was setting up a scenario where my death would look like suicide. A mentally disturbed whistleblower who couldn't handle the pressure and took his own life. She even researched how to make it look like I'd been planning it for months. Richard clicked to another file, financial documents showing Olivia had taken out additional life insurance policies on him without his knowledge. Policies worth over $1 million total, all with suicide clauses that would still pay out if 2 years had passed since the policy date. She's been planning this for 2 years, Mom. Long before the Meridian situation. She married me, convinced me to take out massive life insurance, and then waited for the perfect opportunity to cash in. The room seemed to spin around me. This wasn't just betrayal or even greed. This was something much more sinister. She was planning to murder you. Yeah, he said grimly. Or drive me to suicide, which would be cleaner, legally. The private investigator was documenting everything to support her story, he explained. Stressed businessmen, money problems, legal troubles, a history of depression, it would have been an open and shut case. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the neighborhood looked peaceful, normal. Inside this kitchen, I was learning that my daughter-in-law was a predator who'd spent years planning to kill my son for his money. But then you faked your death first. Dr. Peterson's plan gave me an unexpected advantage, Richard said. Olivia thought she'd won. She got her insurance money without having to commit actual murder. She could play the tragic widow, collect her payoff, and start her new life with Miguel without any blood on her hands. Richard pulled up another screen showing bank activity. She wasted no time. The insurance money was deposited on Monday. $50,000 was transferred to Miguel's account on Tuesday. Plane tickets to Cancun were purchased Wednesday morning. She was out of the country before my body was even cold. Except your body was never cold because you were never dead. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Richard's expression shifted, becoming more calculating. Olivia doesn't know that I'm alive, but she also doesn't know that I found all this evidence before I died. She thinks she covered her tracks perfectly. He opened a new folder labeled Insurance Fraud Evidence. The contents made my breath catch. Richard had documented everything, the forged applications, the unauthorized policies, the payments to the private investigator, the affair with Miguel, and even communications showing Olivia had researched methods of murder that would look like accidents. She committed multiple felonies, Mom, Richard stated, closing the laptop. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, theft. The question is, what do we do with all this information? I sat back down, my mind racing. We could go to the police, have her arrested for fraud. We could, but there's a problem with that approach, Richard said, leaning against the counter. If I reveal that I'm alive, I have to explain why I faked my death. Dr. Peterson could lose his license, maybe even go to prison for falsifying records. The FBI will be furious that I went off script, and Crawford's people will know exactly where to find me. So we're stuck. Not stuck. We just need to be smarter about this. Richard sat back down across from me. Olivia thinks she's won. She's got her money, her lover, and her freedom. She's probably planning to stay in Mexico for a few months, let the grief period pass, then come back, sell the house, liquidate everything else, and disappear forever. What's stopping her? Well, technically, she can't sell the house or access most of our shared assets while I'm legally dead. The estate has to go through probate, which takes months. But she's got the life insurance money, so she figures she can wait. Richard smiled grimly. What she doesn't know is that I documented her fraud before I died. Dead men can still file insurance claim disputes. I stared at my son, seeing a side of him I'd never witnessed before. The anxious, overwhelmed man I'd worried about for months had been replaced by someone harder, more strategic. What are you planning, Richard? I'm planning to let Olivia enjoy her vacation for exactly 2 more weeks. Let her get comfortable, spend some money, and make some plans. And then, I'm going to systematically destroy every lie she's built. He opened the laptop again. I've already filed disputes with all 3 insurance companies, claiming fraud. The investigations will freeze her accounts within days. As far as they know, Richard Morrison suspected his wife was planning to kill him and took precautions. I also changed my will the day before I died, leaving everything to you and cutting Olivia out completely. The scope of Richard's planning was staggering. You've thought of everything. Not everything. I didn't think she'd be stupid enough to post photos of herself partying in Mexico 3 days after my funeral. That was a gift I couldn't have planned for. Richard's smile was cold. Those photos, combined with the financial records showing money transfers to Miguel, will make the insurance fraud case airtight. What about Miguel? He's complicit in this. Miguel is the least of our problems. He's just a guy who thought he was dating a rich widow. When Olivia's money disappears and the fraud charges hit, he'll disappear too. Men like Miguel don't stick around for poor women with legal problems. I looked at my son with a mixture of pride and concern. This is a dangerous game, Richard. What if Olivia figures out you're alive? Then we accelerate the timeline. But I don't think she will. She's too busy celebrating her victory to question it, he said, closing the laptop again. Besides, Mom, she's already made her biggest mistake. She underestimated both of us. She thought you were just a sad old woman who'd grieve quietly and never ask questions. She thought I was too weak and anxious to ever fight back. Richard's eyes hardened. She was wrong on both counts. A calm determination I hadn't experienced in years settled in my chest. What do you need me to do? For now, just keep being the grieving mother. In 2 weeks, when the insurance companies freeze her accounts and she comes running back demanding answers, I need you to be ready. Richard met my eyes. Because that's when we spring the trap. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. I had to continue playing the role of the grieving mother while knowing my son was alive and hiding just 20 minutes away. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope. I visited Richard's grave twice a week, bringing flowers and talking to the headstone when others were nearby. It felt obscene, performing grief over an empty coffin, but it was necessary. Such a tragedy, Mrs. Henderson from down the street said during one visit. Poor Olivia. Is she holding up all right? She's taking some time away, I replied, the lie sliding out easily. The grief has been overwhelming. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been monitoring Olivia's social media obsessively. The Cancun photos continued, beachside dinners, sunset cocktails, and shopping sprees, with Miguel always at her side. Her sister even commented, "So proud of you for choosing happiness. Richard would want you to live your best life." The comment made me want to throw my phone across the room. Meanwhile, Richard had been busy, feeding information to the insurance investigators. "They're calling it one of the most clear-cut cases of fraud they've ever seen," Richard told me during one of our secret meetings. "The accounts should be frozen by this afternoon. Olivia's going to wake up tomorrow morning unable to access any of her money." He was right. On Thursday afternoon, my phone started buzzing with calls from Olivia's number. By evening, I had 12 increasingly frantic messages. The first few were confused. "Eleanor, something's wrong with my bank accounts. Can you call me?" By the 7th message, panic had crept in. "I'm stuck in Mexico. The hotel is saying my cards aren't working. I need you to wire me some money." The final messages were desperate. "Please, Eleanor. I know you're getting these. I'm scared. They're saying I can't leave the country until I settle my bills. Please, help me." I played each message for Richard the next morning. He listened with a grim sense of justice being served. "She's really panicking." "Good," he replied. "She should be." He explained that Miguel, upon realizing the money was gone, had taken the first flight back to Chicago, leaving Olivia alone in a foreign country with no money and a growing list of legal problems. "When does she get back?" I asked. "Her flight lands tomorrow evening. Her sister wired her enough money for a plane ticket. But she's coming back to a very different world than the one she left. Are you ready for this?" Richard nodded slowly. "I've been ready since I saw those Instagram posts of her laughing on the beach while you buried an empty coffin. She humiliated you, Mom. She made you grieve alone while she celebrated with her lover, using money she stole from our family. That's not something I can forgive. You're sure this will work? The insurance fraud case is airtight. She's looking at serious prison time. Her reputation will be destroyed." He paused. "But the legal consequences are just the beginning. The real justice comes when she realizes that everyone knows what she did." Olivia's plane landed at 8:30 on a cold Friday evening. I was sitting in my living room when my phone rang at 9:45. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Eleanor?" Her voice was strained and exhausted. "Thank God you answered. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to call. There were problems with the phone service in Mexico, and then my flight was delayed, and everything has been just awful. Olivia," I kept my voice carefully neutral. "I was wondering when you'd get back. I'm at the house now, but something's wrong with the locks. My key isn't working, and there's some kind of notice on the door. I can't read it properly in the dark." Her voice cracked slightly. "Could you come over? I know it's late, but I'm scared to be alone right now." I glanced at the clock. Right on schedule. The locksmith Richard had hired had changed the locks that afternoon, and the notice on the door was from the FBI, informing Olivia that the house was part of an ongoing fraud investigation. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. "Thank you, Eleanor. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only family I have left now that Richard is." She broke off, making a sound that might have been a sob but sounded more like exhaustion. The drive to Richard's house felt surreal. I'd made this trip hundreds of times for family dinners, holidays, and babysitting their dog. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I was driving toward a reckoning. Olivia was standing on the front porch when I arrived, looking nothing like the radiant woman from the Cancun photos. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her skin pale and drawn. She wore wrinkled clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "Eleanor, thank you for coming." She rushed toward me, attempting an embrace, but I stepped back slightly. The movement was subtle, but she noticed, her expression flickering with confusion. "Let me see this notice," I said, walking past her to the front door. The FBI document was official and intimidating, full of legal language about asset freezing. I read it slowly, watching Olivia from the corner of my eye. "I don't understand any of this," she said, pacing behind me. "Why would the FBI be involved with Richard's death?" "It was a heart attack." I turned to face her fully. "Olivia, where exactly have you been for the past 2 weeks?" "I told you, I was in Phoenix with my sister, dealing with the grief." The lie came out smoothly. "And then I took a few days in Mexico. The doctor said travel might help with the depression." "Mexico?" I repeated the word flatly. Sarah thought a change of scenery might help me cope. "I know it might seem insensitive, but I was falling apart, Eleanor." I nodded slowly, as if accepting her explanation. "I can understand that. Grief affects people differently." Relief washed over her face. "Exactly. Thank you for understanding. But I still don't understand why the FBI would be involved." "I have the number for Richard's lawyer," I said, pulling out my phone. "He might know what's going on." I dialed the number Richard had given me. His lawyer, David Chen, had been briefed and was expecting the call. "David, this is Eleanor Morrison. I'm here at Richard's house with Olivia, and there's an FBI notice on the door." I paused, letting him speak. "Uh-huh. I see. Insurance fraud?" I said, loud enough for her to hear clearly. The color drained from Olivia's face. "What's he saying?" I held up a finger. "Multiple policies, unauthorized applications." "David, Olivia is right here. She says she doesn't know anything about this." "Eleanor, what is he talking about?" Olivia's voice was rising with panic. "He says the FBI has evidence that someone forged Richard's signature on several large life insurance applications. They think it might be connected to his death." "That's impossible. Richard died of a heart attack." I continued my fake conversation. "Financial irregularities? Account transfers to unauthorized recipients, suspicious spending patterns. Eleanor, tell him this is all a mistake. David wants to know if you can account for your whereabouts over the past 2 weeks," I said to her. "The FBI apparently has questions about social media posts, photos posted from, where did he say? Cancun." I let the word hang in the air between us. Olivia's face went completely white. "How do they know about Cancun?" The admission slipped out before she could stop it. I ended the call and put my phone away. "So you were in Cancun? Not Phoenix?" I can explain that," she floundered. "After Phoenix, Sarah suggested Mexico might be therapeutic." "Therapeutic?" I repeated. "Was Miguel therapeutic, too?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. How do you know about Miguel?" "The FBI showed me photos, Olivia. Photos of you celebrating with your lover in Cancun while I was standing over my son's grave, throwing dirt on his coffin." My voice grew hard and cold. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "Eleanor, you don't understand. I loved Richard, but our marriage was complicated. Miguel was just a friend." "A friend you were sleeping with for 8 months while married to my son?" She stopped, realizing she was only making things worse. "Look, I made mistakes, but Richard's dead. Can't we just move forward as family?" "You're right about one thing," I said, turning toward my car. "Nothing can change the fact that you let me bury my son alone. The FBI will be in touch. I suggest you get a good lawyer." "Eleanor, wait. Please, you have to help me." I stopped and looked back at her one last time. "You should have thought about that before you decided to cash in on Richard's death." I drove away, leaving her standing alone on the porch of the house she could no longer enter. 20 minutes later, I was at Richard's temporary apartment. "How did she look?" he asked as I walked in. "Terrified. Exhausted." "Caught," I said, sitting down heavily. She tried to lie, but when I mentioned the FBI, the photos, and Miguel, she fell apart. "Good," Richard said, pacing. Tomorrow morning, the FBI will arrest her on insurance fraud charges. That's when the real consequences begin. He stopped and looked at me. Mom, I've been dead for 2 weeks. Tomorrow, I get to come back to life and watch the woman who betrayed us both face justice. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The FBI arrested Olivia at 6:30 on Saturday morning at the Budget Inn where she'd spent the night. Richard and I met at our diner. He looked lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. She's been charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, he told me. Bail was set at $500,000. With her accounts frozen, she can't make it. When do you come back from the dead? Richard smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen since this nightmare began. This afternoon. Dr. Peterson has it all arranged. The official story is a mix-up with patient identification, that I was in a coma, not dead. A miraculous recovery. Will anyone believe that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's legally documented. Once I'm officially alive, all of Olivia's insurance claims become void automatically. She'll owe back every penny. He explained that Olivia's lover, Miguel, was actually a professional con artist who targeted wealthy wives, and the FBI had been tracking him for months. Olivia thought she was the predator, but she was just prey for a bigger one. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I drove to the hospital to witness my son's resurrection. Dr. Peterson met me, looking nervous but determined. Richard was sitting up in a hospital bed, looking appropriately weak and confused. Mom, his voice was hoarse. What happened? I remember chest pains, and then nothing. The performance was flawless. You've been in a coma, son. We thought we'd lost you. Dr. Peterson entered, explaining the significant medical error and apologizing for the trauma. About that, I said carefully. Olivia was arrested this morning. Insurance fraud. Richard's eyes widened in a perfect imitation of shock. Arrested? What are you talking about? I explained everything, the fraudulent policies, the affair, the trip to Cancun, showing him the screenshots of her social media posts. He stared at the photos, his face cycling through shock, hurt, and finally, cold anger. 8 years of marriage, Mom. 8 years, and she was planning to cash in on my death. After the doctor left, we sat in silence. How do you feel? I finally asked. Free, he said simply. I feel completely free. He told me that the CEO who had threatened him had died in prison, making it safe for him to resurface. I can't go back to being Richard Morrison, but Eleanor Morrison's son, Robert, could start a new consulting business. Maybe somewhere warmer. Robert Morrison, I said, liking the sound of it. What about you, Mom? Are you ready for a new chapter, too? I thought about my empty house and my quiet retirement. Then I thought about the past 2 weeks, working alongside my son to bring justice. Robert Morrison is going to need a business partner, I said. Someone with experience and wisdom. Richard's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 months later, Robert Morrison Consulting opened its doors in Charlotte, North Carolina. The business cards listed Robert Morrison as CEO and Eleanor Morrison as senior partner. We specialized in helping companies navigate ethical challenges and fraud prevention, expertise we'd gained through hard experience. Olivia was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Miguel was eventually captured in Guatemala and extradited. On the anniversary of Richard's supposed death, we visited the cemetery where the empty coffin still lay buried. We brought flowers, not out of morbid humor, but as a reminder of how close we'd come to losing each other forever. Do you ever regret it? Richard asked as we stood beside the grave. Everything we put Olivia through? I thought about the question seriously. I regret that she made the choices she made. But I don't regret protecting our family from someone who would have destroyed us both without a second thought. She chose deception and betrayal, Richard agreed. The consequences were her own doing. As we walked back to our car, I reflected on how much had changed. I had lost a son and gained him back. I had lost a daughter-in-law and gained freedom from her manipulation. I had lost my quiet retirement and gained a new purpose. Olivia had tried to profit from what she thought was Richard's death, but in the end, his resurrection had given us both a new life. Justice, I realized, sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms.